The lack of female drivers at the highest levels of motorsport is glaringly obvious. And as the push to find female drivers who can compete with their male counterparts continues, different play different roles in motorsport, and not all of them are drivers. But tonight we have someone who wears many hats in the sport, and her name is Fabienne Lanz. Very good evening to you, Fabienne, and thank you so much for joining us on Sport on Full View.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me this evening.
All right, so just before we get into, motorsport and how women are really not as represented as their male counterparts, let's talk about how you got into the sport, when you decided to swap ballet for motorsport, and how instrumental your father has been in you making this decision.
So obviously he was a motor racing driver, so born into the family, it does make it easier to get involved in the sport. I suppose with any sport, if your parents are doing it, it's much easier to get involved in it. And he's been with me throughout my career, and very pivotal point or pinnacle point in my career as well, and obviously leading me through all the different stages of growing up, and always being there. And even still today, he still comes and watches my races and tells me what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing right.
That sounds amazing. And I mean, in your career and in your journey in terms of motorsport, around 2016, you won the African Open Karting Championship, becoming the very first woman in Africa, making history in terms of motorsport to lift that title. Let's talk about some of your achievements in the sport, and what you've been able to do in these decades that you've been a part of motorsport.
So that one definitely was a highlight amongst many others that there are. I suppose you could say that I'm always striving to be running in the front, a top runner, a top 5 person or candidate, if you can put it that way. A lot of people think it's very difficult to get to the top of motorsport, but once you start winning championships, actually staying at the top is where the real hard work starts. And obviously carrying that over the years to be consistently there and adapting to the changes that come over the years, as things never stay the same. As we see with Formula One, it evolves all the time. And I think that's where the true motorsport athlete comes in is reading the different conditions and being able to adapt to that.
Absolutely. And of course, in those 2 decades in the sport, what would you make of the opportunities, which are seemingly opening for women in motorsport, even though many have said that opportunities are opening at a snail's pace? It does seem that there are more women being allowed to showcase their talents, even outside of the driving opportunities. So do you believe, Fabienne, that motorsport is finally embracing women and their talents?
I definitely think so. So with a lot of new things or changes that come into place, at sometimes, like you say, a snail pace, but some things actually go leaps and bounds forwards. Obviously, being a leader in all of that, or being innovative and pioneering and opening doors that haven't been opened before, paving the way for the future girls to come in is a role that we need to play. Especially coming from the times of where not many girls are competing, seeing a lot more girls competing in motorsport now, you can see there's a change, and there's a big push for inclusivity and just exposing the ladies to different positions in motorsport. But with that, an education is also needed, because naturally the parents, or more the fathers, tend to drive their sons to do it, where there are daughters that also want to do it. But as women are different, it needs a different approach. You can't treat both the same. So that's where I think an education of that adaptability needs to come in still.
Absolutely, because you speak about exposure and accessibility. Those are big areas of concern for women. For example, you are more than just a driver. You also run programs that are exposing young girls to the sport of motorsport. And we are seeing female strategists in Formula One, for example. Is that also filtering to the lower levels where development is happening for all that are concerned?
I definitely think it's coming down. So as with most things, it has to start at the top. So having Formula One and F1 Academy and all those initiatives like Girls on Track in the UK is the front runner in motorsport, men and women. So they set very, very good examples and initiatives there. And my goal is to try and create more relationships with them and to try and adapt that and make it suitable for Africa.
What's also exciting is that you are going to be representing the country once again in Spain, if I'm correct. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's going to be actually a more global representation. So I'm going to be the ambassador for all the ladies that are competing in the T4 Nations Cup. So basically that is over 220 drivers are going to be there in total. And the girls from all around the world that have qualified to race there are going to be there. And my role is to try and assist them as best as I can, because I raced the Nation Cups in 2022. And I was leading races, winning races. Eventually, I finished 5th. And that's where I really saw that there's a link missing here, because I can't be the only one that's racing in the front here. I need to give back and try and help other girls do the same.
Absolutely. And, just before we wrap things up, I know that you are currently leading the standings in terms of Class B of the championship. Maybe just tell us a little bit about that, what it entails, where are you racing, so that for many of us will be able to follow you.
So that's the SA Endurance Series. So I raced that in AC Cobra with Backdraft Racing. And up until the Kailami race, which was the beginning of August, I was leading the Class B category of that series as a driver. So you get a team standing and a driver standing. And but I raced in a different category in Kailami. So it'll be interesting to see actually where I'm at now. And of course, what's our strategy for the second half of the year? Do we carry on in Class B to try and win that championship, or is there more a team effort of racing with different drivers? Because there's also a development aspect that I do with Backdraft Racing.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Fabienne, thank you so much for making time for us. Wishing you all the best.